Okay, for anybody that missed it, we spent a month in Romania in 2013. We started in Bucharest. We were there a couple of nights, then over to Craiova, then the town of Orsova, which is on the Danube River. And then we went over to Timis County, the city of Timișoara. And right up here in the corner is my dad's village of Camluș Mare. And we spent 8 days in this area meeting family. And we'll go to slide 31 and continue from where we left off last week. While I've got you here, I'll mention the Carpathian Mountains. The Carpathian Mountains curve down through Romania like this. And then on our trip in this area, we crossed over them. Okay, we'll continue.
This is just a picture of Camluș Mare from Google Maps that Joe wanted to show. I think we showed that last week, actually.
Yeah.
And that's the road sign. We met with the mayor and found some people. So this is where we maybe stopped last week. And I said Adi was on Zoom or on his computer for 8 hours while translating between me and his parents.
Right.
The next is the desk where we, in our bed and breakfast, every night we both do our journal, and I email home every night and let people know what we did and that we were still alive. This is the girl here is, well, this is Joe's cousin, Radu, and that's his family. Oh, this is his brother. And we met them and had dinner at their house. Did people see this one last week or not?
No.
This is Luca, another cousin. He's Radu's brother. He's looking at the 3 big pictures that we had. This one, these 2, his wife and his daughter. And he was just thrilled to know that family came to look. Everyone in Romania had to have an ID card when it was under communism. And this is one of Joe's cousins, Theodore McClough.
One of my uncle.
And every so often you'd have to get a new ID card or get it stamped and get it signed by the mayor of your village. And this mayor here happened to be Luca's father. This is a picture of Joe's cousin. This is Joe when he graduated from high school. This is his cousin Petro. We don't know exactly what year he graduated, but I just see a lot of similarity in the way they looked, even though they never knew each other.
The one time we visited cousin Anna in the village, and we wanted to go back to the cemetery and see more family graves and take pictures, but we didn't have an interpreter. So I wrote the little note on the left, the house drawing with her house number on it, and Petru and Sophia, my grandparents, and then also where is or unde este Nikolai, her husband, where is he buried? And so she understood what we wanted, and she grabbed her scarf, jumped right in the car, and took us to all 3 cemeteries in town.
Joe had to drive. She jumped in the passenger side and she'd just point, turn left or turn right, and put her fingers up for how many blocks it was or whatever. And it worked well. And she walked us through the cemetery, showed us everyone in the family where they were buried, and we took lots of notes and pictures.
And that's my grandparents' gravestones right there. They both passed away in the 30s.
And they're the people at the front of our story, Sophia and Petru.
Oh, okay.
This is Camluș Mare, Joe's dad's village. All the houses are painted nice bright colors. And when communism was in place, people had to have a white or brown or tan house. They couldn't have any colorful houses. But now when you drive through villages, they're all painted really cute.
We thought it was interesting the way the eaves troughs were extended away from the house and then drained out. Also on the end of this house, you see a little bit of lettering and numbering, and that was a style to put their name and the year the house is built on the end of it.
Like this.
In letters, 6 to 10 inches tall, so they were easily readable from the street. On the left is the Catholic Church in my dad's village, and on the right, the Orthodox Church. And on our third trip, we got to attend services at both places. That was in the fall of 2017, and we videotaped. Just a mare and a foal along the village. And here's one of the storks that typically you'll find stork nests on buildings or on electric poles or such in the villages and the towns. The storks, we discussed it last week a little, I think. They mate for life. And some of those nests have been in use for 75 years or more. They keep coming back, adding to them and building on. And then the little birds live in the crevices inside of the nest. They do have rail transportation. We didn't get to try it out. We didn't get the best reports on it, but this is like a 2 or 3 car train that travels between the villages in that area that we were in. And a person worked out of the little building where the railroad crossing was and lowered the bar across the highway when they knew the train was coming through, then raised it back up afterward. Some of the basic street signs and brightly colored buildings behind them there. Jimbolia was another town where we had cousins that we met. And a map of the whole country. Timisoara has several sister cities. This sign was coming into the city, and my papers. Dwight Eisenhower started the Sister Cities program in 1956, and there are many towns that have sister cities around the world. Cluj-Napoca in Romania is a sister city of East Lansing, Michigan. This is Freedom Square, the area where the 1989 revolution started to get rid of communism. Like 1,000 people were killed right in front and on the steps of that church at the end of the view. And that was called Freedom Cathedral. And the next picture shows a closer views of it. Really some beautiful, colorful work in the tile roofs on the spires. A few more views from one of the plazas. That's a church on the left, and the National Theater Opera House in Timisoara. Timisoara was the first town in Europe with streets illuminated by electric light. If you read 2 sides of the sign, you can practice your conversion of one language to another. But Nikola Tesla was the one that helped that to happen. This is the bed and breakfast we stayed at 2 different times we visited the country. A neat little place with 3 different suites. And that's a view of the decorative breakfast table that looking down at one of our enjoyable meals.
When we first got to Romania, we didn't realize that we needed a SIM card in our phone in order to get Google or use the telephone or anything. So we traveled for 8 or 9 days with just our maps. And we had to stop and ask people for help quite often, but they were always friendly. Well, we got to Timisoara, we couldn't find that little bed and breakfast that Joe just told you about. And these people were riding bikes and they stopped at a sign or something, and I rolled down my window and we asked in our English, if they could find out where our B&B was. They used their phones, called the number, talked to the lady, and she told them how to get there. We were just a few blocks away, so they rode their bikes and we followed them, and we found our first bed and breakfast. And we paid him with a jar of American peanut butter that we took over as gifts.
Yeah, they didn't want to accept it, but we had to insist. The couple on the right live in Seattle, Washington, but they're both originally from Romania. They've been in the US for 20 or 30 years, and they were staying in one of the suites. So they were very congenial and helped to interpret for us because the hostess at the bed and breakfast did not really speak very good English. So Nick and Lulu were a real blessing. In the larger towns, you had grocery stores and malls, and you could find anything that you'd be able to find in an American store or mall, basically.
Now we're on our way to Cebu. And it used to be an old German town. Over the years, Romania has been inhabited by many other countries, and the shapes and size of Romania has changed. This map is from 1650, but it still has a lot of German influence in Cebu. And these are in Cebu. This is just another look at some of the pretty life architecture. These are called the peeping eyes, and a lot of roofs had them. We thought they just looked like somebody's watching you, but I guess they were really just put there for ventilation during the warmer, cold months.
Yeah, it's the only place we noticed it in that city. And you're walking down the street or out in the plaza, you just get a funny feeling like you're being watched. Then you look over your shoulder and see who's in the roof.
This is Joe's girlfriend in Romania.
Yes, this little lady was in one of the small towns we were going through. Looks like she's just coming back in the late afternoon from being out at her garden area or her property. We typically saw them carrying a heavy hoe like that could be used for either digging sod or killing weeds. And she has what she needs in her knapsack and her work apron on and her boots because it had been raining. And of course, her umbrella. She was very prepared.
This is a glass icon museum. All the paintings are done on glass in native materials, like from the soil or trees or plants. And they're very old. I can't tell you what year they were all done, but they were collected from all over the country, and now they're at a museum here. Mostly religious paintings, but the colors are really vivid. Even if they had a crack in the glass, they just kept it in the frame and had it on display anyway. That's just a close-up of a couple of them. This was the only really authentic Romanian store we went to. It was just a little bitty place, but everything in there was made in Romania. They're famous for their pottery and their macrame. You'll see at the next slide, there's baskets of eggs here. Ukraine and Romania are well known for decorating eggs with beads or painting or all sorts of things. So the one in my hand is beaded egg. It's a wooden egg. The other ones are real eggs that are blown out and painted. So I brought several of those home for souvenirs. And you can see right here next to my hand, they've got a broken one there to show you that it really is an egg. Now we're at Braun Castle, and it was the home to King Ferdinand and Queen Maria. People say it was the home to Dracula, but that was only in the story that was written by Bram Stoker. It was really their home. They raised several, I think 6 children there. Nothing real fancy, but it was well built. Also, there's nothing handicapped in Romania. I might have mentioned that last week, but if you wanted to get into here, there was no ramp or elevator or anything. You had to go up the steps.
And this was about 20 miles south of the city of Brasov, where we stayed at 3 nights.
This is Queen Marie and King Ferdinand. And down below it, there was like a little flea market kind of place, but I bought a lot of things there because we just needed some things from Romania.
This is Renee right here doing her shopping.
Needed some souvenirs.
Here are a couple of businesses. The pharmacy, easy to recognize, and we saw that green cross in just about every town. And the auto repair shop where they take care of tires is on the left. They didn't typically have a big gas station with big windows and big driving and doors. Just a small place. You see, you even had the jack out in the parking area for changing tires. A lot of work done in the villages is more manual labor than you would see over here. A couple of different people here, different locations putting up hay, an old vintage water tower in the distance. And you see the white blossoms in the back. Those were the honey locust trees in bloom in the spring. You could smell them when you were driving through the countryside. And they have an interesting style of putting up hay. This lady is tossing it to help it finish drying, but then they throw it on a tree that has the branches trimmed down, and the hay hangs on the branches, and they end up building a tall, skinny haystack. I'm not sure all the benefits of it. And then there's another picture of haystacks here that are put together out of clumps of hay.
This is just a beautiful church that we saw in the distance on the mountainside. We think it was probably a monastery. There was no town around or village, but it just really showed up nicely with all the green trees around it. At one point, we came across a Jewish synagogue, so we decided we'd go in. You'll notice Joe's got a little skull cap here. I don't know what the name is. Anyway, in order for him to go in, we had to pay for that. He had to rent it for, I think it was two lei or something, not much. But it was a beautiful church, all nice and bright and white. And it's the only one we saw on our travels there. These are just two other churches along the way, but this one is brand new. They were still working on building it, and those golden domes really catch your eye when you're driving along. This is inside a church that was quite new, we think. Most all of them had all these golden pictures. They're framed in gold, religious pictures at the front. And then there's a door here, and there's a door here. And the priest would go in and out of those doors to get different things during the services. They told us people donated these large rugs to put on the floor. And then they also donated their chairs from their house so they could sit if needed.
And the walls and the ceiling, everything but the floor was painted and decorated. And so, like we said last time, that the services in the Orthodox Church are 4 hours long, but people will come and go during the service, especially considering the fact that there's not that many places to sit. In this picture, you can see the chairs that are built right into the church along the walls, but the majority of people end up either standing or having to use the portable chairs. From Cebu, we climbed up a tower, and the view was beautiful in all directions. This shows some of the apartments in the city and then the mountains in the background. The highest mountain in Romania is Mount Moldovianu, and it's just over 8,000 feet. Colorado has dozens that are over 14,000 feet, but still these were tall enough to be rugged and bare and still have snow on them in May. And they do have some ski resorts in the area. This is the one rainy afternoon. It came down pretty hard while we were touring Brasov. In the town of Cebu, we heard music down the street. It had just finished sprinkling, and we headed toward the music, and a crowd was gathered outside, several hundred people. They were being entertained by the Kitchen Drum Berlin Band from Germany. A lot of very lively music, variety of different instruments, and a few chants to go along with the music. Free concert out in the street, and you can see the kids were out really enjoying it.
Yeah, these kids were just dancing and clapping their hands, but everyone that watched really enjoyed it.
The streets in Cebu, as in most of the cities, had brick instead of concrete or paving. Would be a little bit hard to get around if you were in a wheelchair. And on the left is the steps coming up from the main town into the old town.
We did come across one World War I cemetery, and it's the only one we really saw. It wasn't well mowed and everything, but it was very nice. It had this good statue out front, and it was across from a river, I believe.
Yeah, it was Lake Siriu. This is after we crossed over the mountains. We're coming back down into the flat areas. When you leave the towns, typically you see a sign that says Drum Bun, which means safe travels. Judatul means county, so this is one entry on the left going into Brasov County, and on the right is the community of Vernesti, which is in the county of Buzău. Another view by Braun Castle looking up at the mountains in the distance. And this is another view in Cebu looking across the countryside. It went from flat to rolling pasture lands with some trees, and then the rugged mountains in the distance. One of our favorite views, this is a little mountain barn. I think they probably store some hay in it. So in the early or late season, if the sheep are grazing in the area, they have something they can feed them. Maybe it's also lodging where the shepherd can have some comfort overnight.
Or I told Joe it could be our retirement home. Now, if you look at it close, can you see what these are? This was just a bunch of sheep, and they hadn't had their spring haircut yet, but I kind of thought they looked like big balls of hay. We saw all sorts of horses and homemade carts, and they're just, a lot of them were just mixed, matched with, put together with whatever you have.
And often a wagon like this one would be pulled by just one horse. These are probably gypsies, typically lesser educated, poorer income, more transient and not living in one place. But then also there are a few that have real good finances and live in regular locations. So a lot of electric poles were made of concrete, I noticed there, rather than the wood. Being one of the countries in Europe, a lot of the wood got used up over the centuries.
Just a couple more pictures of the carts. Whenever we saw one, I had to take a picture. Not something you typically see unless you live in the Amish country here. This is probably a gypsy family. They have darker skin and the scarf and everything, but actually the gypsies come from India.
Yeah, they came
over the years
from India as slaves by invaders many centuries ago. And one of my second cousins said that he even knows Gypsy. And I said, you mean they have their own language? And he said, yes, it's different from Romanian, and it's kind of based on the language of India.
Well, now we're getting toward the end of our trip, and we spent a few days near the Danube River Delta in a lodge. We had like our own little lodge. These were just some animals that were along the Delta grazing.
Yeah, Delta Nature Resort had a grouping of 29 cabins, I'll call them, on 3 levels sloping down from the hill toward the bushes that surrounded the Danube River.
These were just some birds that were along the way. The swan was in the Delta, and I thought he was waving at me with his foot, so I had to take his picture. The other 2 birds, we're not sure exactly what they were because we never could find a Romanian or European bird book. But the one at the bottom is beautiful colors, and we chased him around for 15 or 20 minutes to get a picture.
So here's a
This
question.
couple,
How did you guys
Yes.
decide what to visit?
We just decided we had to make a circle tour. And so we got the map and we knew we had to go to Timisoara, and then we had to go back to Bucharest. And we kind of went 2 or 3 inches on the map along the way to see how far we could drive each day.
we were
Okay.
scheduled, we were going to stay in the town of Galati, but people talked with us and said, well, there's nothing to see there. I'd recommend going down to the Delta. So we changed the stays for that night and went to Tulsa down by the Danube River. And we're hoping to see a lot of birds that migrate between Africa and Europe, but most of them had already nested and were hidden and out of sight or traveled through further north.
Yeah.
So this couple from Austria, we shared a boat ride with them and split the cost and spent an afternoon in about a 30-foot boat going down the river and back from the city of Tulsa. And there's our snack that we had on the right, wine, olives, sausage, and bread.
Yep. So we talked at breakfast, and then we decided this girl is Romanian. Her husband is Austrian. They're married now. They weren't then. And they wanted to take a boat ride. So we just decided we'd split it. So we went into town together. We went to this grocery together and got the stuff, the food. And then she talked to a guy that rented his boat, and he was our pilot. And they were real nice.
In that area, there are a lot of reeds growing, and they harvest them and sell them to places around Europe. They have hundreds or thousands of tons of them get harvested. Here are some that are stacked up. They're actually like 12 feet tall. They're drying and getting ready for shipment. And some of the natives that live in that area make their living from raising a few animals and catching fish and maybe tourism. But they also use these reeds to build fences around their animal pens or walls for their animal sheds, or used for thatch roofs there and around Europe. Here's an old building with a thatched roof we did see in that neighborhood. There are a few different boats that you could either take tours on, or this one, I researched it afterward, and companies actually can host conferences and bring employees there. You know, maybe a dozen or so people could stay on that boat for several days or a week. And then the smaller boat would be used to transport people and materials back and forth as needed. There's also a certain amount of hunting available for tourists and Romanian citizens in the area, and some pretty good fishing. I think there's like 40 some species of fish found in the Delta.
The Delta is the 3rd largest delta in the world, I believe.
Yeah, 2nd largest in Europe after the Volga River. And the river going up more than 40 miles upstream was big enough for ocean-going ships. Here we see some logs being transported on the left, and again, a variety of boats along the way.
We stopped at this little dock in this picture and went in and got drinks and stuff. There was a real small little party store there, and you could get gas for the boat and things like that.
Did you drink the water?
This is, no, we never drink any, we always had bottled water.
Okay.
Without gas. No, anywhere we travel, we don't really drink the water.
We went as far down the river as mile marker 23, which is written here in Russian or Ukrainian. And Ukraine was on one side of the river and Romania on the other. And there was a lake that we went past the edge of, Lake Nabunu, which is a protected habitat for wildlife and access forbidden. And the sign made that very clear.
This is the view from of the Delta. The table and chairs is where we could have breakfast or dinner if we chose, on a balcony. There was an indoor restaurant too. And this is their very nice pool, and nobody was at it. So Joe and I decided we might as well enjoy the hot tub for a while and the nice view of the Delta.
Yeah, the lodge at the resort had accommodations for maybe 60 or 70 people to eat meals, but right out on the deck, looking across the Delta at the reeds and the willows and the water, it was really a beautiful, beautiful view.
You could always hear the birds, and then at night you could hear the
frogs.
Bullfrogs and things like that. So that's the end of our tour. We just made a great big loop, and we were gone for 1 month.
Wow, well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see, I know we had some questions. I've kind of fit in most of them. What?
Okay, well, I was going to mention this. You can go on YouTube and find a video, and it shows 1,000 years of European borders, how they changed after wars or when other countries took over other countries. It's just an interesting video.
Yeah, it's Watch How 1,000 Years of European Borders Change.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and it.
Go ahead.
Oh, after we got home, I did published a book based on my journal that I wrote every day. So if anybody's interested in a copy of that, you can email me or, yeah, I guess email me. It's $14 and that's with shipping included.
So would you recommend doing a trip like this for people that, you know, don't have a whole lot of information to go by to find family?
Yeah, we didn't, all we had were those 3 pictures, and we knew the village and the county. That's all we knew. So as long as you have someone to help you interpret once in a while, you're fine. It was a safe place. People told us Romania wasn't safe, or, oh, how can you be so brave to go to Romania? But it's just like any other foreign country. If you really want to go, you'll find a way to do it.
Sure. Carol had sent a chat saying that I guess she's been, and she said it's like going back 50 years in time when you're in Romania.
Yeah, a lot of it's like
in the villages, that's the way it is. I would mention about Renee's book. Her book is 6 inches by 9 inches, 63 pages, and has 160 color photos in it.
Yeah, Renee sent me one before she did this, and it really is. I mean, you feel like you were right there with her and Joe while they're, you know, meeting people, and you just realize how nice the people were there and willing to be helpful, and that comes through your book really well. Too,
yeah. So. Well, every night I emailed home every night just so people would know that we were okay and where we were
Sure.
and things. So the book was, kind of based on that too.
Yeah. Well, do you want to stop screen share? And then if people have some questions, they can. So you would just go
Okay,
up to the top, I believe, and, and okay. So does anybody have any other questions of Renee and Joe?
Hey, there we are.
So you will have to unmute yourself in order to talk to them.
I've got a-
Or us.
Yeah, I enjoyed Romania too a few years ago and did a program that's on the homestay, YouTube homestay.
Yeah, and there's a YouTube of it.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. Yeah, and I think you,
Some of the same-
I mean, you covered a couple of the same, but you all covered different parts of Romania.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to some of the Saxon villages near Sibiu, just southwest of Sibiu, where you saw a lot of the wagons and the older style of living. And then Sighișoara, if next time you're there, go a little farther north to Sighișoara. It's from about 1,000, I think, year 1,000. It's a really old town with still a wall. Sighișoara.
Yeah. We were supposed to go there. But we ended up staying 2 or 3 days longer
It's
where Joe's family was. So we
that was really
canceled
worth
that part.
So next time you go, try
Well, we'll
that.
be going.
And we went to Brasov and
Sighișoara.
and also Brest and Carpathian Castle as well, which is a lot more modern. It was built by King Carol back in the 1800s, so it's a lot more modern looking, Baroque looking hunting lodge than Braun Castle. But yeah, I
Mary,
really liked it too. People were very nice.
Mary, were you there with Friendship Force?
Yeah, we had a week homestay in Sibiu. But we had hosted people from Brasov, so we stayed a couple of days in Brasov as well, to visit them in a hotel. We were in a hotel.
Wow.
Okay, well, thank you, Renee and Joe. I really appreciate your putting that all together.
Thanks. I have one of those Easter eggs, and some of the things you showed are just bring me that.
I'm not sure where the echo's coming from, but I'm not sure where the echo's coming from. I think a special thank you to Stan for getting Renee on. And so she could share the screen. So thank you very much for that.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That was great. We really appreciate it.